Hi, this is Lois Haggard from the New Mexico Department of Health. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the ibis-ph-view query selection and builder URLs. You may remember from the overview video that the ibis-ph-view application uses a mechanism called a controller that parses the URL and pairs up the correct XML and XSLT files, the two files that work together to create an HTML file that is sent to the user's browser. You can use the IBIS menu to navigate to a query selection page because the menu buttons use the page URLs as links. In this example, I'm navigating to the population estimates selection page. And once there, I can navigate to the query builder page because my selection page has a link to the builder page. The selection and builder page URLs are very similar. This first part of the URL is called the application's root URL, also the IBIS URL prefix. This tells the internet where to send the request, which server and which application on that server. That string, ibis.health.state.nm.us, is actually a domain name that is connected to the server's IP address out on a domain name server. But that is a lesson for a different time and a different instructor. The next part of the URL tells IBIS which controller to use. The controllers are based on the URL pattern. Here the patterns query/selection and query/builder. There are lines of code in the guts of the IBIS application that identify which XSLT file goes with which specific URL pattern. You might hear Java programmers talk about a model view controller or MVC software design pattern. This is a gross oversimplification, but you can see in this query selection example that the code is specifying a controller which tells IBIS which XSLT file to use. So the URL pattern dictates to ibis-ph-view which XSLT file to use. The URL pattern starting with query also tells IBIS that the XML files will be in the query module folder. The next part of the URL tells IBIS which XML file to use. Knowing this pattern is important. There will be times when you want to test a query that is not on the menu yet, and you will need to construct your own URL to test it. And other times you will have a URL and you'll need to find the XML file for it. Because of the query/selection and query/builder URL patterns, IBIS already knows that the XML file will be in the XML query module folder. In both these examples, the next segment, POP, tells IBIS that the XML file is in the POP subfolder. The next segment, POP selection in the first example, tells IBIS to use the POP selection XML to create the selection page. This is a file type we refer to as a selection XML file. To create this HTML page, IBIS doesn't need to know anything more. In the second example, POP main tells IBIS to use the POP main.xml file to create the builder page. This is the file type we refer to as the module XML file. The last part of the query builder URL names the configuration element to use. Inside the module XML file are always one or more configuration XML elements. Each configuration element has a name element with a value like count, crude rate, age rate, and so forth. Each configuration is used to control the contents of a specific query builder page. For instance, the crude rate configuration will typically have an age group section on the builder page, whereas the age rate page configuration will exclude that section from the builder page because we don't need to select age groups for age adjusted rates. It is the configuration element, along with other parts of the module XML file, that control the content of the query builder page. For every variation on the query builder page, there is a configuration element inside a module XML file. That is, there is a one-to-one relationship between configuration elements and builder pages in IBIS. Let's look at some XML files. In this case, in the state pop or state population estimates query module folder. Inside the state pop selection XML file are the partial URLs that allow the user to navigate to the query builder page. This selection XML file has two selections, one for each configuration in the module XML file. Remember, the only purpose of the selection XML file is to allow the user to navigate to a query builder page. So this partial URL is telling IBIS to use the query builder XSLT file with the selected configuration in the state pop folder, state pop main file, in this case the county configuration. And if we look inside the state pop main file, we will find those two configurations named state and county. There's the state configuration with the name elements value of state, and it creates the state population estimates query builder page, and the county configuration that controls the content of the county population estimates query builder page. Just a couple more things before we finish. First, every module XML file has a local URL link that takes the user back to the query selection file. That link is used by one of the left navigation buttons on the query builder page here. Different IBIS adopters may use different titles for this button, and it is also used by the breadcrumbs at the top of the page. Clicking either one of those will take you back to the query selection page for the state pop module. I also want to take a quick peek inside the menu navigation query selection XML file. This is the file that controls the menu under the Explore Datasets top tab. I just want to show you that this file controls the menu content, and it uses that same partial URL or local URL structure as links to the query selection pages. That concludes Part 7. Part 8 in the series will review the section XML elements that are used in the module XML files.